Well, thank you very much. It's really an honor to be here on the 15th anniversary of the signing of the Violence Against Women Act, and I was pleased to have been here 5 years ago when we celebrated the 10th anniversary. And as Chris said, I chair the Public Safety Finance Division in the Minnesota House of Representatives, and I can tell you firsthand from my years as a legislator how important the federal laws in VAWA are to our state, the statutory compliance with those federal laws, the resources that have gone to research, for training, for demonstration projects in Minnesota and across the country that have helped us look at some of the promising practices around the state and said, is this what we want to do in Minnesota? And I just want to take the few minutes that I have here to acknowledge two Minnesota women. And the first woman that I'd like to acknowledge is a woman that many of you know, and that's my friend and colleague and mentor over 30 years, Ellen Pence. And Ellen just recently received an award from the Advocates for Human Rights in Minneapolis a few weeks ago, and I know that if she was here, that she would remind us of the importance of the words in the Violence Against Women Act. She'd want us to remember what those words mean. And she'd want us to remember the gendered nature of domestic violence and sexual violence, and not surrender to those who are repackaging a lot of old ideas that we debated 30 years ago and trying to redefine the issue. I think she would be very clear that we have to understand the history of violence against women. And the second woman from Minnesota that I'd like to acknowledge, and some of you remember her, she was a great friend to our movement, and that was Sheila Wellstone. And she was a friend of mine, as was her husband, and she was passionate about ending domestic violence. She worked tirelessly to pass the reauthorization in 2000, and just had such a passion for this work. And unfortunately, she and her husband, Senator Paul Wellstone, died in a plane crash in Minnesota in 2002. But about a month before she died, we were talking together, and she was saying, you know, because she knew of the work that I had done with men who batter, and she said, you know, what are we doing about the men? And she was absolutely determined that the next thing we should start focusing on is this whole other piece of the puzzle, and that is men. And I want to just leave you with three things that I think about when we think about men who are usually the perpetrators of violence against women. And I want to offer my hope for a few new directions. And that is, number one, that I think that we need to do more in the future to contain the most dangerous offenders. Ed Gondolf, a researcher that many of you know, has said that there's about 25% of offenders in our communities who come in contact with the criminal justice system who are the most dangerous, who have the most potential to commit horrible violence against a woman or to kill a woman. And we can do more to monitor, track, and contain this group of people. And the second thing is that I don't know about around the country, but I know in Minnesota we've had a rash of murder-suicides. And I think that we need to do more than providing risk assessments for victims of domestic violence, which is certainly important. But I think we need to do more to identify those men who are not involved in the criminal justice system as being at risk for killing their partner. And that is getting to and training people in the mental health community, chemical dependency community, clergy, employee assistants, et cetera, et cetera. And then the final thing, and I know I was in your workshop on the research on domestic violence and the research on sexual violence, and both of those panels yesterday said something about prevention. And I think when we talk about men, this is an important thing that we need to be working on in the future. And that we can have all the laws and all the training that we want, but until we start changing the hearts and minds of boys and young men and men in our culture, the violence will continue. And so in my view, as long as that there is that boys and men are bombarded with cultural messages about what it means to be a man and what it means to be a woman in our society. As long as we have that boys and men have a sense of entitlement, there'll continue to be domestic violence. And as long as women are objectified, there will continue to be sexual violence and growing trafficking in our country. And violent pornography that's a click away on a computer internet that boys are using in increasing numbers. So we have a lot to do, but I'd like to congratulate you on your work. Maybe someday we'll have an anniversary where this was all just looking back at history and we've moved forward violence-free. Thank you so much.